Welcome into PFF TV. I'm Sam Monson. He's Eric Eager. And today we're going to look at the final edition of the PFF Power Rankings of the regular season, heading into Week 17. If you want to see 32 through 16, head to ProFootballFocus.com and see those bottom half of the NFL teams. But let's concentrate on 15 through number 1. We'll take them in 5-team increments, Eric. And this is a really interesting list here. We've got 15 Indianapolis, 14 Houston, 13 Minnesota, 12 Dallas, and 11 Tennessee. There's a few teams in there with some legit playoff hopes still.
Yeah, you have 3 teams in the AFC South. You're all vying for not only, a playoff spot, but a division title. If Houston were to falter and lose to Jacksonville at home this weekend. I think what's interesting is that I think this is in reverse order of what many people think. I think Indianapolis is a team that's surging, but going into the season, we really were low on them. They lost 5 of their first 6, so they've still got numerically a way to climb. Tennessee, with question marks surrounding their quarterback, I think probably has the worst prospects going into Week 17 among these teams. But ultimately they've been pretty good the last 3 years, winning 9 or more games in all of them. So we still have them a bit higher. I think Week 17 will be great for these 5 teams, especially Minnesota here in a win and in situation.
Right, and I think maybe the most interesting team of that group of 5 is Dallas at 12, because they're in control of that division. They're a team that's kind of flying right now, but Dak Prescott is their quarterback, and the grades just still don't exactly love Dak Prescott right now. He's the thing that we're concerned about.
Yeah, they have a great defense, and they'll be at home in the first round of the playoffs. Chances are they'll play a team like Seattle. We saw how well Seattle was playing offensively on Sunday Night Football against, granted, a far inferior team in Kansas City, at least defensively. But that'll be really interesting to see how far that they can go with, as you said, Dak Prescott, one of the kind of middle-of-the-pack quarterbacks in the NFL.
So moving up the list, at number 10, we have Seattle, 9 Pittsburgh, 8 Los Angeles Chargers, 7 Philadelphia, 6 Baltimore. I think the most interesting team of this group is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they need help now to make the playoffs, and yet they're number 9 in our power rankings.
Yeah, that shows how razor thin the margins are in the NFL. I think nobody's going to fault you for losing on the road to the New Orleans Saints. I think even the Los Angeles Chargers, the team above them here, kind of a loss that isn't embarrassing. But when you go and you lose to Denver, you lose to Oakland, you tie the Browns early in the season before Baker Mayfield was their quarterback, and those things come back to bite you, right? And so even though Pittsburgh, by our metrics, they have 2 of the best receivers in the NFL. Big Ben, I think, is coming on strong. Great offensive line, improving defense, but ultimately might be left out of the playoff race here.
Right, and I don't think anyone would begrudge the Steelers a spot there. If they did make it, they would be a legitimate AFC contender. They just, the results have fallen in such a way they might not make it because they need this kind of help. The other team I think that's worth talking about here is the Los Angeles Chargers, because they were number 3 a week ago before they played the Baltimore Ravens. Struggled on offense, struggled really across the board against Baltimore, and it took a real tumble in the power rankings because of that.
Yeah, and Baltimore's a tough defense. They provide some exotic plays offensively, but really the Chargers self-destructed a lot, right? So in their second drive after their first drive resulted in an interception, they had 2 penalties that wiped out big plays. In the second half, they had 2 second and long run plays that resulted in holding, killed those drives. And so when you're facing one of the top defenses, if not the top one in the NFL, you just can't make those mistakes offensively. The Chargers executed extremely well in Kansas City 2 weeks prior, struggled there. So it'd be interesting to see. Kansas City's got a pretty good shot at getting that 1 seed. It'll be Chargers being the 5th seed, got to go on the road probably to make the Super Bowl, and I just don't know with them.
And then one more team I think to mention from this group of 5 is Philadelphia, all the way at 7, ahead of the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously are in control of that division. But the Eagles still have this legitimate defense. They're starting to get a little bit more healthy on the back end in their secondary, which was the real problem all the way through the season. And Nick Foles has yet to have the bad Nick Foles games that presumably are somewhere down the line.
Yeah, we've always talked about how coverage is more important than people think, right? And what the Eagles provided against Houston was not only great pass rush, but at times they held up in the back end. They held up on the back end in the previous week against the Rams. Just getting guys like Avonte Maddox back, Rasul Douglas playing a little bit better, I think really does help them on the margins. And Nick Foles, set a all-time franchise record for number of yards in a game. He came up big when they eventually did relinquish that lead against Houston at home.
All right, so let's move into the top 5. Number 5, we got the Chicago Bears. Number 4, the New England Patriots. Number 3, the Los Angeles Rams. Number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs, with the number 1 team at the PFF, the top of the PFF power rankings, the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, and these would basically order how you would project them in terms of Super Bowl odds, right? So New Orleans Saints, we have them at about a 33% chance to win the Super Bowl, and you can see why, right? They're 5 or 6-1 against teams with winning records. They have home field advantage. They have one of the best home field advantages in the NFL. What would surprise people, I think, after watching these teams that play the last few weeks is Kansas City and the Los Angeles Rams are in the top 4 in terms of Super Bowl odds. And it's because playing at home in the playoffs is actually worth quite a bit. What you did in weeks 1 through 10 matter just as much as what you did weeks 11 through 16. So while Kansas City is going to struggle defensively, they've struggled defensively all year. In some games that's enough, and I think at home it should be enough. We have about an 18% chance to win the Super Bowl per our metrics. The Rams a little bit behind there because they'll get the 2 seed. And New England here, we have them at about a 14% chance to win the Super Bowl based entirely on the fact that their first game will likely be a bye in the playoffs.
Right. This is going to be fascinating because of all these teams, these more than most teams seem to have strong home field advantages, and they may end up needing to lean on them heading into the postseason. That's what makes this group of 5 a really fascinating prospect for the playoffs.
Yeah, and let's not discount Chicago. Chicago at 5 here, tough win on the road against San Francisco, a team that had beaten their previous 2 opponents at home. One with a winning record and a Denver team that's not a horrible team. And Chicago is 1 win and a Los Angeles Rams loss away from hosting a round 2 playoff game after a bye. So they're not a team to discount. Mitch Trubisky is always going to be that player that I think we're going to doubt because, as we saw last week, some of his really negative plays turn out into be positive plays for the Bears, and they still only scored 14 points against a San Francisco defense that's not particularly great.
Right, and Trubisky has been playing a little bit better as of late. 4 of his 5 best graded games have come in the past few weeks. He is improving just at the right time for the Bears heading into the postseason. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Remember, if you go to ProFootballFocus.com, you can check out the full list of 32 teams, find the write-ups for each one, find a little bit of information on your specific team. But that'll wrap it for this video. Make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button and check out the rest of our YouTube content.